Hey guys, let me get to the comments. Can you hear me? Michelle, you're always my first to tell me. Spill it. Can you hear me? I know, Jonathan, you can hear me and I can hear you.
I can hear you just fine.
I'm sure they can hear us, but I want to make sure because we've had mistakes before, right? Or something is all right. All right, guys, come on, chime it in. Christina, chime it. Let's see. Steve, thank you. Nice to see you again, Steve. So Steve's confirmed. All right, so we're good to go. Because I would hate to see us, we're battling here and these guys can't hear us.
Yeah, I did that one time where I went about 20 minits and my microphone was not working and it was not good.
So, I remember you were talking about that last time I was on your show because, yeah, it's really funny. I don't think you even need an introduction, Jonathan, because
I always need an introduction. You can say nice things about me if you like.
Jonathan Ginsburg out of Georgia. You guys, probably most of you know him. He's got a fabulous Q&A Wednesday nights at 8:30. Is it 8:30 still?
Yeah, it's 8:30 to 8:45, depending on what's going on, but normally about 8:30.
Okay, right. And you're having it tonight?
I am.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we could just hop right in if you want. You guys want to just hop right in? Anything you want to share, Jonathan? Anything new in the SSA world or anything like that?
No, well, I mean, I think the biggest issue is there's been a lot of talk about changing the rules. Nothing has come down yet, but as you all may know, there's been some talk about changing the standards for disability to reduce or eliminate the grid rules or make age less of a factor. The goal would be to reduce the number of disability approvals by about 20 to 30%, which is not good. Everything I'm reading is that still very, very preliminary, has not been formally proposed, has not gone through comments. It would probably be a year and a half before it went into effect. But the point is that it's on the chopping block. And so there are certainly people that don't want, they think that Social Security disability, as ridiculous as it may sound, is too easy to get, which, you know, as you and I both know, there are far more people who get denied that should be approved than the other way around. But there does seem to be a move in Congress, at least at this point, to make it more difficult to win. Whether that'll have to go through Congress or can be done administratively, I don't know, but that's something that we're all kind of keeping an eye on, and it's very concerning.
Here's my take on that. I know it's a the law set by Congress, and this is just from something I did, is unless Congress chooses to do something like that, requires that age be considered. That's part of the whole thing.
I would think so, but you know, I've also read, and look, there's a lot of on the the Social Security blogosphere. There's a lot of doom and gloom, and a lot of the people there are, you know, well, Social Security could do it administratively; they don't have to get congressional approval. I think if they tried that, there would be lawsuits. There'd be a lot of pushback. But realize Social Security disability claimants do not have a lobby. It's not like the AARP is going to go to bat for them. Mostly, I mean, there may be some, but you know, it is so. You never say never. I mean, I agree with you. It should go through Congress. It seems pretty substantial, but there's a lot of things that you think should go through Congress that are not.
Yeah, I think the unknown uncertainty part is that the grids themselves are a regulation.
Yep.
Right, and they had. I don't know if you recall this. I wouldn't have recalled it. Specifically because this is right when I came in, but I was just again doing my research because you hear all the doom and gloom, even though there hasn't been a proposal of changing the grid. I think changing it from 50 to 52 or something. You know what I mean? Like upping that whole, and which I don't know that would affect the older years, but the 50 to 52, which obviously it would.
Right.
And that initiated actually like in 2000 and. It was either 3 or 5. And I did a little article on it with the links to when it was proposed. They had comments and everything. Took a few years. It was shot down and then it was totally like off the table. And then the only other, and that's because that was the regulation part, because the grids themselves are a regulation that fulfill the fact that you need to look at age.
Yep.
And consider the differences between over 50s and under 50s and all that. And then the other change that I saw was in 2011, and I thought this was a harmless one. They expedited the vocational review of the sequential evaluation process in terms of the fact that they could skip step 4 if they're going to find step 5,
Mhm.
the asset for other work. So I thought, well, that kind of makes sense, even though,
Yeah.
people probably were very up in arrears about it. I would hate to see, and again, I haven't seen anything from any official source yet. And that's what I keep trying to scour for. Like, is there
Right.
somebody, I see a guy who was in a previous, a former SSA guy who was a proponent of, I think he was a proponent perhaps of changing maybe that 50 to 52 year thing, but he's not even in the administration. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm always looking for something that is more than just the ridiculous stuff that we hear reporters talk about when they can't, and then
Right.
they can't even
Right.
provide
They
any
don't know.
evidence.
You
They
know, and
just speculate. So
I would point out that, you talk about changing the grids, and I think what we're talking about is the grid right now. If you're limited to sedentary work and no transferable skills, you're over 50, you could be found disabled. They moved that to 52. I don't know if you're finding this, but I'm finding a lot of judges now are pushing people to 55. I've had a number of cases where somebody hired me, they were 53, 54. We get to a hearing, they turned 55 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and the judge is approving the case, but approving it as of the 55th birthday.
yes,
So that's definitely going on.
I got a bunch of cases from, like, I would say 2024, 2023, they were
Mhm.
getting even approved at initial and recon, but only after, like, let's say they were, like you said, 54
Right.
when we started, and I personally thought they totally could do no more than sedentary, and
Right.
in reality, and they were just always denying on initial. Then maybe if they hit the 55, they're like, we awarded you, but as of yesterday, because you just turned 55.
Yep.
And then one of them I even took back in 2024 to appeal, and the judge, he called it a favorable, but he just repeated what they
Yeah.
did. So
Right.
it was like a 2-year fight. That ended in 2024 for the same result, where
The same result.
yes, he won, but it was as of 55, which was 0 back benefits for the
Right,
client.
right. I mean, I don't think there's any question that the judges are being told that under pressure to limit the amount of money coming out of that trust fund. I mean, the Social Security trust fund's supposed to run out of money in something like 10 years, maybe
Yeah, in the
12
in
years.
the 30s now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be, and the way Congress normally works is they wait until, there's a month to go, then they decide to do something. And of course, it'll depend
Yeah.
on which party's in power and so forth. But yeah, I mean, I think that's got to be on their minds, and they're trying to eliminate past due benefits. It's really, really hard to win if you're under 50 at all. And so if they change the grid to 52 and maybe the light grid to 57 or something, it's going to be even more difficult, but again,
if they do it all the way up the pike,
they
right?
could. Now, again, that maybe they put, sedentary grid at 52 and then the light grid stays at 55. I don't know. But yeah, there's definitely
No, but you're right. They could just move the whole thing, shift
they
it
can
by
move the whole
2
thing a couple of
years.
years.
But
and,
again, have not seen anything from any source, like a real source, as
Right,
opposed to
right.
like the blogger people
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
the major, networks that just literally, I was reading the articles and not a single source could they cite authoritatively, period.
Yeah.
It was all about, this could happen, this may happen.
This could happen.
Like, just,
Well, I mean, I
and I was
think
like,
that
why are you doing that?
yeah, I think the idea is just being floated, and again, it may be to gauge public reaction to it, and then but I wouldn't surprise me at all if one day we wake up and there's this massive proposal in the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, that would make these massive changes, and we're all going to be scrambling to try to address it. I hope that doesn't happen, but look,
I hope so too.
yeah,
And
I mean, normally
they
these
could literally
things
revamp. Yeah, all they have to do is put up the old proposal from 05. I mean, they've
Yeah.
been trying to do this for.
Yeah. And then
20
look,
years.
they just, how many times have they changed the listings where all of a sudden you wake up and there's the musculoskeletal listing is now twice as hard to meet. So
Mhm.
that could happen. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
there's
the treating provider rule,
enforcement.
that was
Yep.
huge.
Yep.
I mean, we deal with it, but it's
That's
it
gotta be
almost makes it.
That's
Go
one
ahead.
of the most stupid things I've ever seen. I mean, to think that a doctor who never examined you, or somebody who looked at you, talked to you for 30 minutes, would have a better, more valuable qualitative opinion than a doctor who's treated you for 5 or 6 years makes no sense. And honestly, most judges, I think, kind of recognize that.
Yeah.
Though it doesn't formally exist, I think many judges will, give more deference to treating sources.
And so it ends up, I feel like so often it's a matter of getting the judge to want to award,
Mhm.
like whatever that presentation all through the case, even, and then with a brief,
Yep.
um, and getting him to see your point and want to, like, you
Yeah.
want your client to be likable,
Yep.
so much it really is. You have to have the evidence there too, obviously, but that for the things that they can have all that discretion on, I think it's so important to play nice,
Yep.
and
Well,
just
and
try to show them what you know.
and I think also, I'm a big proponent of saying never go into a hearing with an attitude of entitlement. And that's just a phrase I mentioned to a lot of my
Heard
clients.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, don't go into with the idea that you're owed anything or that you've decided you're disabled. Don't even say, when I became disabled. It almost seems like you've decided that you're disabled. That's a decision for the judge. You go in with the idea, I'm a fighter. I hate the idea of pursuing disability. I mean, look, most of us, we sort of base our self-worth on what we do. And I've had many people, I'm sure you have as well, they stop working and they're sitting at home, and even if the family is understanding, it's hard not to get upset with that income not coming in, or they don't have any, value anymore. It used to be they were at work, they had their buddies at work, they sort of had their
Right.
place in the world, and all of a sudden you're at home and you have nothing to do, and nobody's calling you, nobody cares, and that's really, really hard. Express that to the judge. Let the judge know that you have worked since you're 15 years old, that you don't mind hard work, that you want to be self-sufficient, and the idea of pursuing disability is just it's dreadful. You hate the idea of doing it. You're only doing it because you have to, and the goal would be once you're better, you'll be back in the workforce. I think if you bring that attitude, even if you just think about it as you're preparing for the hearing, that can go a long way, so the judge doesn't feel like you're trying to game the system or that you're lazy or that you don't really want to work. And I think judges really appreciate that. And that's why even if you can try to work, I tell my clients, if there's a job you could try to do, even if it's not successful, in my opinion, 2 or 3 unsuccessful work attempts can be very helpful evidence, don't you think? Because it shows
Yeah.
you're trying.
And even if, let's say, the years leading up to filing, they had, several successful work attempts that negate the whole bringing back the alleged onset date,
Right.
AOD guys, right? I think judges do look at that stuff, particularly if someone has always worked.
Mhm.
It could be they had a long stint with one company, and then economies happen and stuff, lay off, and then going back. And as they correlate, I think the medical records of what you're doing, and granted, when you're working, you're not treating as much as if you weren't working, probably just because of the work schedule, but they could start to see this matching up
Right.
of job, how to stop that job. Then and you see the complaints and the things going on, even though they go back to work for another 9 months or another year and a half, but it all kind of paints a historical picture, which I think kind of, without the person even speaking, shows something that would then back up if they're like, Judge, I want to go back to work so bad, I just can't.
Yep.
And our finances, I would never be doing this, but for,
Right.
Even if you should be doing it anyway, as long as you're disabled. But I mean, the wealthy should still be doing it, I think, claiming their benefits, because that's what they bought. That's in your insurance, It's not,
Yep.
it's not
Well,
only
look, I had a
struggling.
client tell me yesterday that she had surgery, went back to work. She goes, I was wearing she called it an Elizabethan collar. I guess that's one of those big collars, that you wear, to stabilize your neck or the cervical.
This thing.
Again, that shows this is a person who is motivated. And the fact that you would go back to work with that much discomfort 6 months after a major cervical surgery, I think shows something about your work ethic, your character, and those things matter to judges. I mean, I'm sure you do this exercise sometimes. You're talking to a client or you're preparing for hearing, you think, okay, if I was the judge, what would impress me? And honestly, I think one of the things that would impress me would be somebody who really shows they're trying their hardest. They went from a physical job to maybe a less physical job. They couldn't do that. They tried this job. It didn't work. They tried that job. They couldn't get through training. It just shows they're really, really trying to do something. And, even though credibility is no longer
Yeah.
quote unquote a factor, it still is. I mean, judges are human beings, and
Hmm.
they want to believe that people, look, they, as a judge, if I was a judge, I would feel like I've got responsibility to Social Security, to the tax-paying public, to only approve cases where the person's truly deserving. And you want to show that you're truly deserving because you don't want to be here. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but that I don't want to be here. I'd much rather be, at my job, as opposed to
Right.
talking to a bunch of strangers about my urinary incontinence, things like that. And I think, let the judge know that that's what's going on in your head. I think it's really important, for you to kind of just, and you just talked about this, establish that connection, human to human connection. And I think that's
Yeah.
really, really important.
One thing I've seen on occasion, not that often, but I'll see it like in posts and stuff online, and someone will say, um, I have my back is worse than it used to be, and I have worked my whole life, and I deserve this. It's time for me to relax and retire. And they're like, say, 58 or something like that. And I think it's kind of like the wrong attitude to have, because I know there is very spotty, but some people who, do have the sense of the second it gets less than comfortable, I shouldn't have to work anymore. And that's not the way it is. Or they sometimes say, and this is like just such a minority of people, it's so small, but I've seen them say they relate it to their income. They get laid off from a high paying job. And, with between age discrimination and companies now being able to get less expensive people to do the same work, when middle management gets too pricey, and then they bring in too smaller managers, like younger people. And they'll say, I can't make what I used to make.
Yeah.
And then they feel entitled to because their body is maybe not like it was when it was 20, but, you could still do work as a cashier at Home Depot or something, because you're not that bad off, and I sometimes I have to forewarn, like, this is not about, the SSA does not discriminate on a high income worker versus a low income worker. You're not more entitled. A doctor isn't more entitled because he can't be a doctor anymore, but he could be a, something else.
Right. A luggage an inspector,
yeah,
a hand packer. That is very
you don't
hard.
get it easier because you're a wealthy you're not treated better than
no, absolutely. And that's the whole point is, the other thing is, you never want to say nobody would hire me. That's not
for
you to say. That's not for you to say. It's, if there was a job out there, could you perform it? It's all about performance. But you're right. I've had, clients who were, 6-figure earners. And I say, well, could you be a greeter at Walmart? And they look at me like I have 3 heads. Like, well, why would I do that?
I do the same.
Because that's what the rules are. And if you had a private disability policy, maybe it's own occupation. But Social Security is like, can you do anything at all? And you've got to, I think, again, part of what we do as attorneys is explain to people, this is not logical, sometimes not fair. The question is, if there was a job out there that you could do, even if it's minimum wage and you'd be bored out of your mind, could you do it? And, that's a hard concept if you're used to making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, to think, well, could I do a job, earning $25,000 a year? I could do that, but is that going to be, that means I'm not disabled? Yeah, that's what that means, unfortunately. It's a real shock, I think, to a lot of people, because it's, I don't have to tell you, everybody out here knows it's expensive out there. You go to the restaurant, it's 20-30% more than it was a year or two ago. Everything is expensive, and you gotta, and I wasn't caught up.
On top of the expenses, I always reminisce about this. I'm like, gosh, when I was growing up, and we were kind of like a modest family, kind of rural, and phone, you just did local phone calls unless you were going to pay, and I had a mother that was from another country, so sometimes these calls had to be made, I guess. And originally it was through an operator, even, like, you couldn't.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Sure.
Yeah. And I remember, like, you had your phone, and it was maybe a few bucks a month, right? Like,
You had to
really
rent
small,
phones. Remember, we had to, when I was growing up, we rented our phones. You couldn't own them.
Oh,
I don't know if
really? I don't
that's,
remember that.
yeah, I mean, it
But,
used to be you
but
had to
maybe I
rent
just didn't
your phone.
know.
Well, because
Um,
like the Bell companies had a monopoly and you had to rent your
oh, before
phone.
the breakup. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You had to rent your
Ma
phone and
Bell.
long distance
Yeah.
calls were expensive and yeah, very
Yep.
different environment. But yeah, and I remember we had a phone in our house. The first house I lived in was built, I think probably right after World War II. There was like a little nook there where you put your phone, a little dial phone, and it would
Yeah.
ring and everybody like, wow, the phone's ringing. It was like
The
a big deal,
operator. Yeah.
you know?
But
And
now everybody, like each person has their own cell. I mean, this is like,
yeah,
even when I started adulthood, there was none of this going on.
yep,
And now, I mean, the person coming into life, coming into adulthood, they have to have a cell phone in this
yep,
day and age. You just have to. I mean,
yep,
just for safety, even, and that can. Well, there are some more things, but like when I look at our cell phone, I'm like, this is something that would have been free. I've got a family of 4. We're paying $300 and something a month, so everyone has cell
yeah,
because now you can't get away without data. So they're gonna whack you for the data,
right, right.
and it's just drives me crazy. And then internet, we didn't
Yeah,
have that expense. So in with all this great connectivity and stuff, it's
it's
such
expensive.
high prices
Cost-
to for your
Yeah.
basics now.
Yeah,
And
the question
it's
I've
just,
got is when my adult children will get off my cell phone plan because that has not happened and they're in their 30s. And I'm like, wait, one of them's married
oh, you're
with a kid.
bad.
I'm like, wait a minute, why am I paying your cell phone? And my son who's 32 is like, why he's using
Sucker.
up all my data and he complains about it. It's not fast enough. I'm like, well, maybe you ought to pay for it yourself. Well, it's not that bad. It's
Oh,
like,
that's funny. I mean, I feel bad enough my 18-year-old is still on it, but
yeah,
you
it's
know.
like, my gosh, but whatever. Yeah, no, for those who are younger, back in the day when I was, when I was a kid, I mean, like I said, one phone, it was a dial-up, there was no internet, there was no any of that stuff, and nobody is. Look at what we're doing right now, doing a video call. You saw that at Disney World, the video calls. That was just, so we just take it for granted. It's just a normal part of our day, but
It
uh,
is. It's crazy.
it
It's
is
it's
kind of
crazy.
crazy.
And for those, I mean, the younger people will never know the difference, but most of the probably people that are here with us
Mhm.
today, not all, but we have a lot of people closer to our age,
Yeah,
and they know the difference because we all lived in the old way,
old days. Yeah.
say the Stone
Well,
Age, which
which actually is a nice segue into, one of the things that we as attorneys have to deal with is something called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. Speaking of outdated things from a long time ago, and Social Security is still using this resource that was last updated in the 90s, 1990s, not 1890s, but 1990s, about jobs and jobs that existed in 1990 are done a lot different in 2025. Yet people are being denied because vocational witnesses are coming up with jobs that are described as being
Mhm.
unskilled, for example, when in fact they are skilled or semi-skilled. I mean, an example that I always give is um, a person who would operate a copy machine operator. It used to be, when I first started practicing law, you'd go to the copy machine, you press a button, it would print out a piece of paper. Now you scan it someplace. And so the person making a copy has to know how to use the scanner, has to choose the right destination, then has to go to the email box or the box on the server, download and rename that document, and put it in the right place. And may have to manipulate things in a PDF, reader like Adobe or something like that. Well, that's not an unskilled job. There's 4 or 5 steps to that. You've got to have knowledge about, computers and renaming files and, PDFs and JPEGs and all these type of things. And so, yet, people are denied in disability cases because they could be a copy machine operator because it's an unskilled job. I would submit it's not an unskilled job. And
Right, I agree.
you
And
know,
do you know that I read is expressly noted in the discussions about what we were just talking about before about fixing the vocational situation
Mhm.
that has been stagnant for 40 years. I think that's the biggest part. I mean, that's like a definitive part of, and there was the rule, which I loved, the 15-year-old to the 5-year-old. Like, don't we
Mhm.
love that? That was the biggest gift I ever saw. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and
Just so
career
people
here.
understand what you're talking about, used to be the look back was 15 years for jobs. Now it's 5 years. And why that's important is that the way what you did 15 years ago is really irrelevant to what you might be able to do now. So if you haven't worked substantial in anything substantially in the last really it's 5 years before your hearing. So, theoretically you have no past work, even if you work 30 years, which is really a real help because we don't have to deal with transferability of skills. So anyway,
yeah, no, it's exactly true. And in so many ways, like I often do with my clients that I didn't represent on initial, particularly if their work history report was before the 2024 change.
Mm-hmm.
I'll redo with them their work history report. So the judge is going to have an actual exact set of information. And in this particular instance, and this is all in the last week, I mean, the things needed to be redone because they had been shuffled, and so you couldn't even match up what was on page 1 with the list too. But first I thought there was 4 jobs, and one of them was arguably light. And the rest were all medium. And turns out that one ended 3 of 2020, and I'm like, bingo, we don't have to include it. It's, because the 5-year look back will be the day of adjudication, because that's what it falls into. There's no remote DLI. But that 5-year, 15-year to 5-year change that we're talking about, guys, in that was called an interim. I'm going to get it wrong, but whatever it was is prefaced with interim when they did that, because there's a continuation to finish the rest of the stuff, which I think is, and that's what is definitively on the table. Not the other fear monger, which yes, any bad thing can happen. God only knows. But, and the other thing was the secondary part to that was supposed to be getting the vocational stuff about those jobs you were talking about, the DOT being so out of date. We need to have some other source other than the Labor Department's got to fix that, and goodness knows if and when they're going to do that. So it's really important because, like you said, some of these jobs, like, no, that job A doesn't exist, because remember those things about substantial numbers and how they're done. So for sure.
Although I had in a case about 2 weeks ago, I had a vocational witness come up with surveillance system monitor, which, for those who don't know, for years, the easiest job that existed in the world, the Social Security world, was the surveillance system monitor, where you're looking at a bank of monitors to see if somebody breaking in to a used car lot at 3 a.m, and all you have to do is hit a button if they are. Well, Social Security, they issued a ruling that basically says, maybe it was an emergency message, that vocational witnesses are not supposed to consider that among other. There's I think a list of maybe 15 or 20 jobs that really don't exist anymore. There was some kind of. However, when I looked more closely, the rule says that the presumption is it doesn't exist, but it can be rebutted. So the vocational witness could argue that there are, in fact, these jobs that exist. Now, in my case, it didn't matter. The case is going to get approved. And the hypothetical question, the judge is going to use a different hypothetical to represent the person's functional capacity. But it's interesting that there's still, some vocational witnesses are still using that. But yeah, there are a lot of these jobs out there that don't really exist anymore. And it's very disconcerting when a vocational witness will come up with that. And just as another point, we're talking about these possible changes. One of the things I did read was that they won't make this change until they come up with a better system than the DOT, because again, I think it would be subject to a lot of challenges. You've got an outdated resource that Social Security is trying to, they put a Band-Aid on. They issued a ruling that said, you can use the DOT, but that's why the judges ask all these other questions now about what sources you used. But if they're going to completely change the whole adjudication system, they've got to have an updated system. They've tried this several times, spent a lot of tax money to come up with it. Nothing has worked. Look, the reality is, in my opinion, nobody really knows how many jobs exist for any particular occupation. I mean, there's no way. There's no way that anybody really knows. They're just guessing. And you hear them talk about, well, they use these different codes and things like that. Well, I'm extrapolating that, this particular job, requires you to be able to lift 15 pounds. If you can only lift 10, I'm taking, a third of them away. Well, that's a real rough way of doing it. So nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. And it's a fiction they use to try to determine whether there's sufficient jobs. Again, we look, I always tell people Social Security is an alternate universe. It exists with its own rules. It's almost like, the rules of physics, that apply in our universe don't apply in another one. Social
There's
Security
no
is kind of like
gravity.
that. Yeah, right. It just, they
Or it's
have their
double
own
gravity.
rules. And I get it. They have to have standards, but you're asking a human being, an adjudicator or a judge, to make a decision about your capacity to work, based on medical records, which we all know can be faulty. I mean, the doctor doesn't like you, or the doctor doesn't believe in the idea of disability. The records don't help you, or you can't afford to go to a good doctor. You're going to community health services, and the doctors there don't want to mess with disability. It's really, really hard to really get a sense of what somebody's capacity is. And they're just guessing based on medical records or testimony, various things. But it's a hard thing to do. It's not. And you have judges that go in with a bias against claimants. They feel like most people are faking, and you prove otherwise. Other judges go in, well, I'm going to accept what you say unless you give me a reason not to. It's a real arbitrary system inherently. And I'll stop. I'll get off my soapbox in a second. Just look at the approval rates. Look at the approval rates in any one hearing office. You may have a hearing office where you have a judge that approves 75%. And literally next door, the judge next door, Judge B, approves 20%. Well, how is that fair? And it just happens, if you happen to get Judge A, you win. You get Judge B, you lose. So, there's really not a lot of look, even vocational witnesses. How many times have you heard vocational witnesses say, well, you can be off task for 10% of the time. That's excessive. The next one says 15%. How is it? There's no consistency there.
Yeah, where is the reality?
Yeah.
There is a reality. They just haven't, grabbed it. And
yeah. Or even the questions the judges ask, they use the term, and y'all might hear this, you're handling, fingering, what is it? Handling, fingering, and whatever, fine motor manipulation is limited to frequently. Frequently is 3/4.
Burns me up. Burns me up.
2/3 of the day. Occasionally is 1/3 of the day. Well, I mean, is that really, what if you can use your fingers for, typing or writing for, 30 minutes a day? That's less than the terms they come up with are these sort of very, very broad-based terms. And again, they have to do it, I guess, because that's how you have to have a system. But it's, my point I'm making is that when you're a claimant, you've got to realize you've got to fit yourself into their box. It doesn't work the other way around. What we try to do as attorneys is give you an idea what their box looks like and say, this is what it's going to take to win. Is this accurate? And come up and practice your testimony. And I would encourage anybody, if you have an attorney, certainly do this. Even if you don't, look at Steph's, YouTube, look at my YouTube, get a sense of the way the system works, because you got to play in their sandbox, not the other way around.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, sometimes people say, well, this is the way to, and it's like, no, you really just have to mold around them. There's ways to do it. Like, it just takes some preparation. But anyway, I think that's all.
Yeah. One final point I want to make, because you did raise something I think is really important. And that is, there's a form they give you called a work history report, where you have to fill in what you did at your past jobs. So let's say you had 3 jobs. Job number 1, what you did, how much you lifted, how much you carried. Judges look at that. And so when you fill that form out, I don't remember the form number off the top of my head, but there's a form.
3369.
Okay, where you explain what the jobs were. I've won cases where somebody put on that form that they lifted 25 pounds. And the judge looked at that and said, well, that's not a light job. That's more of a medium job. So, really think about what you did: sitting, standing, walking, fine motor manipulation, lifting, bending, stooping. Don't give that short shrift. Don't assume that doesn't matter. That form in particular, I use it all the time in my briefs, where I talk about the claimant or basically wrote that she lifted 25 or 30 pounds. It's not good to come to the hearing and say, well, actually it was 35 pounds. So I put 15 on the form. You don't want to do that. Make sure that form, and really think about how you fill those forms out. That one in particular is really, really important, in my opinion. So,
and particularly for the over 50 crowd, for sure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And with the lifting, and I know we've said this before, you guys have probably all heard it before, I really always pick on that. I mean, that's probably one of the things I talk with them more about than anything else, because absolutely we have to make sure that's perfect when we go in. And if sometimes they'll leave out something because it's an infrequent thing. Only once a week did I have to lift that
Mm-hmm.
bag of cement, or
Yeah.
there's three like that. That was, or they want. I think some people get the perception like, well, that makes me look like a laborer, and I was not a laborer. I was an
Mm-hmm.
assistant manager in that home improvement store. So
Yep.
so they don't want to really say the things they did to make it all work while they were assistant manager. That yes, in theory it should be the stock guy's job, but as an assistant manager you of course have to do it too when needed. So I'm always like, no, if you were lifting 40 pounds, say it. Don't be talking about your in office work and only your in, like, sometimes they just focus on the brainiac side of it, and the
Yeah.
organizational managerial. And I'm like, no, you gotta put that down. You are hands-on, because that's the nature of those jobs anyway.
Yeah.
But that is going to make the difference in your case.
Good. Look, I was talking to I had a hearing earlier this week. My client had a job where she was working at a drug and alcohol rehab facility, and part of her job was to be trained about how to deal with an out of control patient, somebody who's coming off of drugs or whatever it may be. And she's like, you have to learn restraints, how to restrain people. They call them, there's a pick maneuver she talked about. And I said, well, did you ever have to actually do it? She said, well, no, not in this, she had been that job before a number of years ago. She did, but not in this particular time, because I had to be prepared to do that. So even if you didn't do it, part of the job requirement would be you had to have the capacity to do it. So I
Right.
think that's fair game as well, to say, look,
Yes.
do this
Yep.
job. I had to have the capacity to be able to restrain, a 200-pound male who was, coming off of crack or something like that. And, that was part of my job
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. And I had to be aware that I might get attacked at any point in time. I had to have situational awareness, which is, focus, concentration, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
yeah, but even if you didn't ever have to do it, if that was part of your job, or you did it once every couple of weeks, but you had to do it because you're taking inventory, put that down. I think, yeah, you don't want to
Absolutely.
minimize. Yeah, you don't like. I think exactly what you said. Even if you had your job was more of a office type of job, but if you had some physical requirements of it, even if it means hauling bottles of water or hauling office supplies, once a week, once every couple of weeks, if that's part of what you did, that's the 35 pounds. That could put you into the grid rule territory, win your case. So you definitely want to include all that.
Absolutely. It's so critical. It's almost like we can't overstate it.
Yeah,
It's how
yeah, no,
important it is.
absolutely. Yeah, you just, again, this is part of the game that you have to play, because again, the vocational witnesses are looking at jobs based on what some outdated book says the requirements were. You actually did the job, and you can describe what you did, and you have to think about it. I'm sure you get this too. Well, I don't know how much I lifted. How much is 10 pounds? Well, a gallon of milk is 8 pounds. That gives you an
That's
idea.
right.
But 20 pounds is a lot of weight, especially if it's not, easily balanced. That can be really hard to do. If you got a back problem, lifting 20 pounds is a real issue. So
And how about like 2 gallons of milk, 15
Mhm.
pounds?
Yeah,
It's actually more like 16, but
16, right.
when people think that 15 pounds doesn't sound like a lot, try lifting 2 gallons in
Yeah,
one hand. It's
yeah.
hard.
You can't do it, or even with two hands and trying to carry it across the room.
Yeah.
If you've got, balance issues, or you have numbness in your
Right.
hands, or you've got back problems, those type of things can be hard. I guess the point we're making is, all these physical things that you have to do, really think about these things, not just when you're filling out the form, which is really important, but before you're hearing, really have answers to these things. How much can you lift? You don't want to be in a hearing, and I never really thought about that before. That's not the time to think about it. You want to think about these things before. You need to know how long you can stand. And I always give the example, you're at the Department of Motor Vehicles waiting to get your driver's license renewed. You're at the TSA line at the airport, which now I understand are like hours long because they're not paying the TSA worker. How long could you stand without having to sit down, without leaning on something? These are things you have to really have right in front of you. And I tell my clients, especially in a phone hearing, write it down, have it in front of you. Have all these things down. I mean, just your attorney will be able to tell you how long you can stand, how far you can walk,
Right.
how, distance or time, how can you sit in an office chair, not a recliner. You're not in a recliner at work.
That's right.
How long you sit in an office chair. Can you bend, kneel, stoop, crouch, crawl, get off your knees, if you got on the floor, can you put your shoes on? Do you have trouble with that? You have trouble in the shower? You have to have a shower chair. All these things really paint a picture. That's what we're doing here, painting a picture of your capacity. And, the more consistent you can be in your forms and the way you testify and definitively testify, don't come across as, I never really thought about it. You want the judge to feel like, hey, this person is really being, giving me an accurate picture, and they're not exaggerating. They're telling me the truth. Makes a big difference, in my opinion.
It does. I always suggest to them too, because we do this when we're prepping, and I think for pro se's it can be really helpful. Look at your old function report, maybe prepare a new one for yourself, because those things largely, a lot of things might have changed. Usually they get worse. Sometimes some things get better, but and you'll know, because there's going to be a lot of the questions that the judge will ask you. Or if the judge doesn't and you can see one that's gotten worse, I would bring it up, because he has your old one that wasn't as bad. That's part of your record. But if he doesn't ask you about that particular activity and you've gotten worse, you might self cross-examining, right? Or direct examining yourself, which is kind of what you're supposed to be doing when you're unrepresented. You have to be the lawyer up there. I would point those things out, like how much that, back on so-and-so date when I did that function report, I was able to drive this door. Now I can't. My wife has to take care of my husband.
And the converse applies as well, meaning that if something has gotten better, tell the judge that as well. You would be amazed how it freaks judges out when somebody says, my shoulder is actually better now. Let's take that off the table. That goes so far with your credibility. And look, things do get
or even
better.
Just improved, but not perfect.
Improved. Right, because so many judges realize they're seeing people all day long. I'm disabled, pay me. You go in there and say, I got these problems. When I filed my application, I had a really, really bad problem with my hand, but I've had carpal tunnel surgery and now I can type again. You're basically saying, I want to get better. I have gotten better. Let's take this off the table. That enhances your credibility like nothing else. You wouldn't think about it. You don't want to just come across as everything hurts. My pain is at a level 10, 24/7. You're not believable there. But if you say, my pain, it's at a 4 or 5 all the time, it's an 8 or 9, 2 hours a day, 3 times a week when I overdo it, or if I overdo it, or, my shoulder is now better. I don't want to, let's not consider that anymore. Those type of things really show that you are trying to tell the truth. And I think judges have a real, and look, if I was a judge, I would. I mean, it's a real, they have a sense about it. I mean, imagine you're a judge, you've heard 1,000, 2,000 cases. You're going to get a sense of somebody who's telling you the truth. You just will.
And particularly if it's going to be showing up in the record that you have gone back, let's say with that carpal tunnel thing, if it's already in the record that you've told the doctor, oh yeah, it's great, then you may as well be the one that brings it to the judge's attention, because he's going to get it through his advisors or whoever's helping him right there. So, bringing it out first.
Although be aware that sometimes, doctors, particularly surgeons, you go back in to see them, patient says she's doing great. Well, they're saying that because they did the surgery. They want it to work. So sometimes, right, egos, and they don't want to get sued. So sometimes, you also, the other thing I would tell you is get copies of your records and look at them. You may see that the doctor said either A, that you're doing great when in fact you weren't doing all that great, but the doctor's covering his or her own behind. Or, the other thing would be the doctors will sometimes do a history and they just cut and paste. And the way their software works, that history just remains the same for every appointment for the next 3 years, even though a lot of things have changed, and they don't change it. So you have to be aware of that and say, well, look, if the judge says to you, well, I'm looking at the doctor's notes and he said, you're saying X, Y, and Z is fine, but the last couple of years it's gotten worse. My lower back has gotten worse. Well, if you look at the record, you can say, well, Judge, if you look at the record, you'll see that the history doesn't change. The doctor never changed the history. This is going back 3 years. A lot has changed in 3 years. And now I'm not doing so good. And and I'm telling the doctor this, and that's the other thing is if you're not doing well, put it in writing. Emails find their way into the record. Phone calls find their way into the record, but put it in writing if you possibly can, where you send the judge an email or a letter saying, this is what's going on. and that becomes part of your record, so that, if the doctor's software is not really robust, or the doctor's lazy, or the doctor's trying to do a CYA, you have evidence in there that, no, I'm not doing quite so good, and I'm doing everything you're asking me to do, but I'm not doing quite so good. Just something else to be aware of.
Absolutely. Yep. It's one of the downfalls that are occurring in the medical arena are hard to overcome, but that's the best way, I think.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. I was talking to a client I've got a hearing with next week, or actually tomorrow, come to think of it. And, I looked in the record, and there were several times where the doctor says, you need to have a colonoscopy because there seems to be some internal bleeding, and the client refused. I'm like, why would you refuse that? It's not pleasant, obviously, but it's not a big deal. He refused this test, refused that test. So I asked him, I said, I'm looking at the record, and it says you've refused these tests. And the law in Social Security says you can refuse a test if, there's a reason for it. It's got to be something reasonable. And he said to me, he goes, the reason is, I have significant cardiac issues. I've got some problems. I don't want to be put under anesthetic. It really concerns me. I may not wake up. Well, that's a pretty darn good reason, but if you look at the record, claimant refuses colonoscopy. That's not a whole lot different from saying he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to be put under anesthetic, and because of his heart problems, he's concerned he may not wake up. Medical record incomplete. So, that's something in my hearing I'm going to make sure to ask him, well, why have you refused this? That this is the reason why. That's a legitimate reason. Just a refusal, no explanation, that could work against you. It looks like you're not being cooperative. So
that's right.
Those records, you got to look at those. Look, we can.
And I would send that. I would do that in writing thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure.
Yeah, you can do that. There's a form SSA 795, which is a statement of the claimant. You can put that in writing. I'm reviewing my medical record. I see on such and such a date, the doctor stated I refused a colonoscopy. I refused an EMG. I refused whatever. To clarify, the reason I refuse is not because I don't want to cooperate, but because I'm concerned about going under anesthetic. I'm concerned about the reaction to the dye that they use for this. I'm concerned about, the stress. I have high blood pressure anyway. The stress of being in this procedure might cause my blood pressure to go, too high. You can be proactive. And again, this is where an attorney will help you. So, this is what you need to do. But those are the sort of things you can do to make an average medical record above average, because you're explaining things, you're clarifying things. This is look, as attorneys, we want to be, helping our clients and offering guidance, but it's a partnership between the attorney and the claimant, the client. You've got to cooperate and think about those things, and what can we all do to really make this record stronger. And, your attorney will tell you, these are some weaknesses in the record. And what can we do about that? And how do we make that stronger? Because, judges are they're looking at, I would tell you, most judges, they look at the hearing, the file, maybe for an hour or two, a few days before the hearing. They're not studying this record. They're just kind of zooming through it. And you have to, explain stuff sometimes. And, they're giving you 45 minutes at your hearing, maybe 30 minutes of testimony. You got to use every minute of it. And stuff in writing is better, in my opinion, because it's there. They can't ignore it, right?
And when I was saying writing, though, the 795 is a great idea, too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get it into the record by doing that, faxing in and say, Doc, I just wanted to reiterate what I told you, because usually they have the conversation. And then the doctor just doesn't put it in the record, the reasons. And say, I have a cardiac issue, or I've had trouble with these kind of tests before where I have some whatever the concern is based on what you've experienced before is, I think, really, really helpful.
Yeah. And look, if you have they
got to keep it in the record. So
if you have an underlying chronic condition like diabetes or high blood pressure, there are certain tests and things like that don't work well with those conditions. Whether it's the loss of fluid because you're preparing for a colonoscopy, that could be a problem. If you've got cardiac issues or diabetes or whatever, or again, high blood pressure or susceptibility and, allergies to dyes or things like that. These are all things that you may know in your mind, but if you don't tell the judge that, if you don't make it clear, they're not going to guess. They're not going to ask you. You've got to make that clear. So really think about all the things that potentially are, issues that may be secondary to your underlying problem, but might prevent you from taking medications. How many times have clients said to you, I can't take sulfa drugs, or I can't tolerate Tylenol, or I can't tolerate, latex gloves, or whatever. I mean, these are all things that can really impact your care. And, the medical record might just say claimant refused. Well, there's a reason. And again, those reasons can really make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, guys, should we take the questions?
Let's take some questions. We've been blabbing along.
Yeah, that was good. That was good info. So Christina was here first. I just got to post that up because she's so helpful.
Now, Christina, you're double timing me. She's on my live stream. I thought I was your old. I thought Christina was in the Jonathan Ginsburg fan club. It looks like she is.
I promise.
Oh man, I am bummed. Okay, I can live with it.
Okay, Kevin Johnson's in the house.
Yeah.
Oh, Grandpa Panda and
Goldilocks. Okay.
Rare treat before Halloween. Right. That's so funny. Goldilocks, huh? I don't think I have curls, but okay. All right, so here we have a thing of substance. Constitutional immunity 2.0. Good to see you back, Constitutional. So it looks like this is one of two. Hi, Stephanie. I want to share a true story. I filed in Maryland and was almost approved for SSDI, and I moved to Florida. I got a call stating since I moved, my case was transferred. That would be standard. To Florida to file all over again. You wouldn't have to do that. No. But this is the part, and I skimmed this right before we started. My CE exam was favorable, but not accepted in Florida. Did another CE that was tolerable. It's not Florida related, so
makes
that CE was acceptable. But I wonder if they gave you a chance because for some reason they didn't think that was a good CE examiner.
They wanted another one. Yeah.
Did another CE that was favorable, still denied initial and recon. ALJ approved me before hearing.
Good.
Perfect. So you appealed. Yeah. So that did work out well. And thank you for that share. It was kind of interesting what you were saying about them giving you another one, but it is the CEs can go. I mean, you can even have your case moved or a DDS in some other state is actually doing it, even though your case isn't transferred, because they're all kind of helping in, where things are weaker. But yeah, the CEs, everything is federalized. So a CE there would be, valid if you move. I mean, I've never seen
that, right?
Anything but. So I'm thinking it could be the C. What if the CE fellow or woman was taken off their roster of acceptable CEs? You just never know. All right, but I am really psyched for you, Constitutional, that you prevailed. Yay.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's good.
It's always good. And we got Steve 56. Saw you last week, Steve. Good to see you again. He says, great news. My initial SSDI application is showing approved on the SSA website. Yahoo, there's Steve. Anything I should do or watch for when I get the award letter? They did use my onset date. So
good.
I guess you can see on the site that they tell you the onset date. That's pretty cool. Not anything in particular, Steve, that I could think of. You just want to get that letter. I would still read it all the way through, make sure there's nothing funky in there. It's probably going to be pretty standard. Usually you get at least 2 letters, right, Jonathan? You get the one saying we've awarded, and then it's going to follow up with the numbers letter.
Yeah.
Like it isn't always just one. It's like
the notice of award will have the figures on it and so forth. And it'll show that they agreed that the onset date was the same one.
And then they lay out the math for you if it's a few years of back benefits and stuff.
Yep.
Oh, Dimple, hello. Nice to see you.
I know Dimple comes to my live stream.
Yeah, she's great. Virginia Gomez, I see you again. Just wanted to say good morning, Chica, here for your great advice. All right, well, we're so happy you're here too, Virginia. Let's see, I'll skip through. I see Michelle M's in the house talking to Steve. That's cool. I always just try to bypass the personal conversations. I appreciate that you guys interact though, because sometimes you guys really help each other, sharing information that we've already gone through. So Jay Palmer says, just curious about my hearing. My attorney only asked the vocational expert one question, and I'm just curious as to why she didn't really ask her much questions. What do you think, Jonathan?
Well, I think, first of all, hopefully the question was one where the answer was no jobs. So if that's the case, some judges don't want to waste their time. They ask one question, the answer is no jobs. You won, move on. Occasionally, very rarely, the judge will ask only one question that basically has very minor limitations, and the answer is yes, there are 10,000 jobs that the person could do. That's not a good sign. But usually when they only ask one, it's because the case is so clear, they just want to go through they have to go through the exercise. But assuming the answer was no jobs, that's a really good sign. That's what I would say.
Well, remember, he's saying the attorney only asked, so we don't even
Oh,
know.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes the judges will ask all the questions the attorney was going to ask, and the attorney maybe will throw in there, if the person's off task 15%, or the hypothetical person is likely to miss 3 days of work per month. If all those questions, all the other questions have been asked, you just do that just to cover your bases. It really is. But yeah, that would be there. The answer would be that if the judge asked all the questions the attorney was otherwise going to ask, and generally if it's going well, one thing I've learned, I'm sure you have too, Steph, if you're winning, keep your damn mouth shut. Don't pull defeat out of the jaws of victory.
Zip it.
Yeah, you just right. If you're winning, don't say anything. So
true.
A lot of times it's better to, if you're winning, not to ask a lot of questions.
That's right. Don't open up a can that you don't know is even there.
Yeah.
Like if you already if the judge has already kind of purposely put himself into a restrained box of where he can rule and only in the favor, he did that by design. Why screw with it? It's what you wanted, right?
Yeah. Now, I had a case yesterday, 2 days ago, where the judge, and honestly, this is a judge, you've probably been in front of the judges like this, wasn't really very well prepared. And basically my client was over 55, and he had a semi-skilled work background. The judge is asking all these questions about like a light RFC, and the vocational witness identifying jobs. Well, the obvious question is, are there any transferable skills into the hypothetical? So I didn't know the answer, because I didn't think there were, but the judge didn't ask it. I felt like I had to. So I asked the question of the vocational witness, looking at the past work, are there any transferable skills into this light hypothetical the judge gave? And thank goodness the vocational witness said, no, there are not. If the judge denies it, I got a clear ground for appeal, because that meets the grid rule. Again, I don't know why the judge was asking about light work, for a person who's over 55 without asking about transferable.
Right.
You did. So yeah, but usually that's pretty rare. Most judges are a little bit better prepared for that. But I just thought that I had to ask that question. But yeah, I think sometimes you just have to know when enough has been said, that you don't need to ask additional questions to hear yourself talk.
Right. But did you have your hands behind your back like this when you asked the vocational, in case you what if he comes up with something? But
yeah,
you had
well,
no choice.
yeah,
you
no,
had to take the risk.
Well, I felt like I had to ask the question, because otherwise, if the judge denied the case, well, first of all, I could always come back. If she came back with transferable skills, I could ask another hypothetical that would eliminate that. But I felt the judge already asked the hypothetical. It was not unreasonable. It was not exactly as limited as I would have liked it to be. I kind of had a hunch she was not going to find any transferable skills. But, I just felt like I had to ask the question, just because I don't want to lose and then have to appeal and get a remand and take another 2 years. So I just let's just get this thing over with. And then the judge, in fact, this is also a case, and I'll just throw this out to your audience. There's something in Social Security called a borderline age situation, where if you are 54 years and 10 months old or 11 months old, they can treat you like you're 55 for purposes of the grid rules. You're 49 years and 10 months old, they can treat you like 50. So this particular case, my client had a prior unfavorable hearing decision. She reapplied, and then she used an onset date that was before a week before the unfavorable decision. Well, you can't do that. You can only use an onset date that's the day after the unfavorable decision. So again, because I don't want this case to get thrown back because the judge screwed it up, I said, well, Your Honor, as you probably know, the prior unfavorable was issued on, July 5th or whatever. But the onset date claim is June 29th. We need to make this July 6th. But I would also argue that this is a borderline age situation. And the judge looks at me like I had 3 years. I mean, like, what are you talking about? I said, well, yeah, there's a POMS regulation, which is, and I had it in my notes, and here's the regulation, and you can treat this like borderline age, and here's the correct onset date. Oh, okay. I mean, like I said, just some judges are just not.
Maybe a newbie, could be. But usually a newbie has been doing this a long time.
No, she wasn't new. She wasn't new. And I'd been in front of this judge before, and she was very pleasant to my client, awarded the case. Although I looked on the listserv, and a lot of other attorneys, there's a listserv that many of us belong to, and her reputation was terrible. Basically, that she had been denied cases of terminal cancer patient, all this crazy stuff. That had not been my experience with her. But, again, very unprepared. In my opinion, because she was asking questions that, quite frankly, a judge should never ask, because they should know. But again, you got to sometimes step in and sort of take control of it. And because I'm hoping that we'll get an approval. It should be approved, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that's weird, particularly if she's habitually like that. Like I get it can happen. Like for whatever reason, she was sick the week before and just trying to catch up.
Actually, she was, speaking of sick. I mean, the judge again. I have nothing against her. She had approved a previous case, and I found her to be very nice to my client. She was coughing the whole time. She was hacking and coughing, and she kept, and she wasn't obviously feeling very well. And so maybe that was part of it. Maybe she was on some medication or something, but she was just not in a good place. And like I was asking me some really weird questions, because I'm like, you should sort of know that. You're the judge. I'm just a lowly attorney. I don't know nothing.
Maybe her cough was so bad before the hearing started, she tripled up on her cough syrup.
Yeah, exactly. The codeine,
Oh my God. All right. George Graham's in the house, just saying hello. 2 stars for the people. Awesome. Okay. We love that. Little Nutty says, where was he last week?
I can't be everywhere. I do. Well, actually, last week, because I was on I went on a little vacation.
Did you not have yours last week?
I didn't do mine last week. I was I have I played, despite my advanced age, I still play a little tennis. Not well, but I play. So a bunch of, like 3 of my buddies and I, that we all play tennis together, kind of we're on the same team, and we played, just in between. One of them family lives down in Florida, so we went down to Miramar Beach, Florida, which is on the Panhandle. Nice. And we went down there on Wednesday morning and stayed to Sunday morning, and just we played tennis and ate a lot of pizza. No wives were present to tell us we couldn't do those type of things. Had a lot of dessert. That's right. And so forth. And so that's where I was. I just said, what, I could do it from there, but my friends would be in the background, and I don't think the world needs to see them, yelling at me from the condos. So I just decided not to do it. So that's where I
understood.
Yeah,
I missed one a few weeks ago too, but I was sick as a dog. A very quick.
Really?
It was like a quick weird bug. I mean, literally, like it took me out mid-morning. I had to go to bed. I thought I was gonna be able to pull it off, but it started getting worse and worse. And like 11 o'clock, I had a post that I wasn't gonna do it, and I pulled it down. And then I went to bed. It was painful. It was it was weird. And then by 4 o'clock, I woke up, and I was like, a little off my game, but I felt so much better. It was the weirdest thing I've ever had. It was so short.
Yeah, she spelled my name wrong before. But
was there an extra O in there? Or something?
She subscribed to my Instagram, and I subscribed back, so I can put a face to the name. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I think her little doggy's cute.
Yeah.
Let's see. Viv says, good afternoon. Thanks for doing this each week and having a guest today. Well, if you want to see more Q&As, always do Wednesday nights at 8:30, 8:45 with Jonathan.
Yep.
Jonathan is like the original. He's the original YouTube share of.
There you go.
Of videos. What's it been, like at least 15 years?
No, not quite. It's about 10 years. Yeah, I started doing it.
I think it's one longer.
It could be. I mean, I remember the first few I did are just painful to watch, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I just, I had always, I'd done websites before, and I was using that, and then it kind of faded out. And I've always been a photographer. I take a lot of pictures, and I was always the kid with the Super 8 movie camera running around taking videos, and I used to edit my videos actually by splicing. I mean, that's how far back it goes.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? Let me give this a shot, and just over time, just as you found out as well, you kind of develop a voice and a personality, and it just tends to work. And I just found it was a lot of fun, and I enjoy it, and I
It
got good
is.
reaction to it. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I love Wednesdays. It's like my social time with people
yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed as opposed to purely like head to the grindstone.
Yes, yep, I
Um,
agree.
Virginia, who piped in, says good morning to you, Jonathan. I see you
Hello.
here. Jenny Gomez. All right. So this is Earth One. And I know I remember last week I was asking, is that Earthel or Earth One?
Hmm.
Good morning, Ms. Joy. If CDR is scheduled past full retirement age, FRA date, how important is it to continue physical therapy, especially if there's conflicting recommendations? I think you're so close. I think there's very little risk to you.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Go and enjoy that retirement that's coming up. Between neurologists and pain management, and they conflict on whether you should even do it.
Yeah.
I would really not worry about it, and I probably wouldn't even worry about it anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, you still go to the doctor for your own benefit.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I don't think that if you're at retirement age, the odds of a CDR moving to, even if they move to terminate you, so what? You're on retirement. So
And plus, he says it's scheduled. Like I guess he's probably had like a 5 to 7, and it
yeah,
happened at 63. I mean, it's going to be passed, so I
yeah,
don't think they're
yeah,
going to ever get to you.
right.
They got bigger fish to fry.
Yep.
La Lulu's in the house. Always enjoy learning from you both. Even better when you collaborate to inform, share, and educate us. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's definitely fun. Ms. Oh, is this Thrill Seeker? Am I extrapolating that name?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think we've met, Thrill Seeker, but nice of you to visit us.
I don't know if you want your dental assistant to be a thrill seeker, though. You want him to be really, really careful with those sharp instruments they have in your mouth. Right? Yeah, I don't want my dentist to be looking at a thrill seeker. I want him to be really calm and just, I don't know about that. Okay.
That's so funny. She says, I have worked as a dental assistant for 40 years. Do they see this as a transferable skill?
You probably have some. I mean, not outside the dental realm. I mean, you'll have some skills, I mean, there are, if you're a dental assistant, there may be some jobs in a dentist's office that don't require the fine motor manipulation. I mean, probably not too many, but, maybe keeping records in the front desk or something like that, where you're familiar with the terminology. But
like the secretarial part of the job.
Yeah. My guess would be there's probably not going to be any transferable skills outside of dentistry. But there may be, it depends on the vocational witness, and really the transferable skills, when they talk about that, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's transferable skills into a hypothetical. So if the judge gives a hypothetical,
your RFC.
Yeah, your RFC, residual functional capacity. So if the judge gives a hypothetical that you're limited to occasional fine motor manipulation, handling, fingering, touching, and so forth, then there may not be any transferable skills. So my guess would be minimal. For one, the other thing is, if you've done it for 40 years, you're probably over 50, probably over 55. There's a regulation called the POMS, or Program Operations Manual, that says if you're limited to sedentary work, when they do a transferable skills analysis, there has to be minimal vocational adjustment. So if that applies, then you're probably, even if you have transferable skills, it would have to be so close to what you did that it doesn't really apply. So I think when all is said and done, probably not going to be a transferable skills issue. Maybe my guess.
I kind of agree, and I think dental assistant is very, very specific to that field. Dimple says, "Thank you for covering the grid info on possible changes."
We hope there are no changes.
Yeah, exactly. Let it ride. Give us some time.
And I'll just give myself a plug. I have a website called gridrules.net. If you want to see the grid rules and you want to see examples of how they
right out there. Yep. Yeah. It's great. And just remember, changes are always possible. That has always been the case. Like we said, there was things that popped up in 03, 05, then in 11, where the change was actually made. It wasn't really harmful. So I didn't care. It wasn't going to harm claimants.
Yeah.
So
look, we had a really,
and some changes are good, like updating the DOT.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Look, I mean, there was a period of time when we had Commissioner O'Malley, who was, I think, in office for maybe 8 or 9 months, and he had a really friendly relationship with the claimants bar. And so a bunch of things happened during his short tenure that benefited us. Obviously the biggest one is the look back from 15 to 5 years. That really helped us. So, when he was in office, and this was last year, I think last 8 or 9 months of 2024, he got some good stuff done. Not, couldn't get everything he wanted to get done, but he did get some good stuff done. So, that was kind
He
of
did. I'm going
outline.
to throw in this. I'm going to just throw in this comment.
Yeah.
The 15 to 5 was wonderful, and that had been obviously in the works for
Right.
years long before he came about. But he did do some harmful things too. But I don't really want to get into it here.
Okay. Well, that's good
But
to
in
know. I didn't
hindsight,
know.
yeah.
I will talk
Yeah.
about that sometime.
All right. So Earth One says, I'm 64 and CDR is scheduled for 20.
Oh, no, you don't worry about it.
Yep.
You're fine. Because by the time
You're golden, Earth.
you're not actually going to have one. They're just saying you're on that
That's right.
cycle, but you'll be in retirement. You'll be on a beach with an umbrella, with a drink with an umbrella in it by that point. You won't need
Yeah. Little Nutty says, do you think big picture that calculations are being made to transition to a more universal basic things? AI is creeping up fast. That's kind of outside the sphere of this.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be something I would want, that's for sure. Maybe if you live in New York City, that's what you're going to get if a certain thing happens. Very soon. All right, so let's move on. P. Brown. Hi, P. Brown. I don't think we've met, have we? Really enjoy your conversations. Very helpful. Awesome. Earth One goes on to say neurologist is against physical. Okay. We already talked about this. All right. This is just more. You know the answer, right? Earth One. You are good to go, pal. Dimple says, I'm definitely dreading the disability process, but the RA has made working full time no longer an option. I know. That's RA, guys. For those of you that don't have it, is usually rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. P. Brown says, I have danced around my symptoms, used FMLA, and made every excuse to extend work deadlines using PTO, etc., to be able to keep working and avoid doctors. Oh, don't avoid the doctors, though. Has doing this hurt my case now? I can't work at all. I don't think so. Avoiding the doctors is the only part that I would say you should have been building that. But you had to go to some degree because you had FMLA. So at least at some point. That's the only part I think is bad. The FMLA is fine. Using PTO, whatever, that's all fine. The avoiding doctors, unfortunately, you need that really robust, heavy medical evidence, generally speaking, to thread that needle to how you will get to an award.
I would just say in general, if you don't go to the doctor, the absence of medical records says to Social Security there's an absence of a problem. So if you don't go to the doctor, they assume you're not going to the doctor because there's nothing wrong with you. It may not, and it may be because you can't afford it, maybe because you're scared of doctors, it may be because you can't, any number of reasons. But if you don't go, absence of medical treatment means to Social Security absence of symptoms or problems.
Yeah. So it's like an optic thing as well as they have no acceptable, sufficient, to be able to, under the law, award you. So it's almost like you're tying their hands against you. Jets fam. I was approved today, waiting for the letter. Your channel helped me a lot, and I thank you. I am so happy for you. That's awesome. That is so terrific. Art of the practice. How do you approach a claim remanded to ALJ due to not containing adequate evaluation of opinion evidence from a medical provider, nor adequate eval of the jobs available to the claimant in the national economy? All right, so let's unwrap this a little bit. How do you approach a claim that was remanded to ALJ due to the ALJ not the decision, I think you're saying, didn't contain, in your opinion, adequate evaluation, and I guess in the AC's opinion,
the Appeals Council's decision,
evaluation of opinion evidence from a medical provider, nor, that's really something he's going to have to do, nor adequate evaluation of the jobs available to the claimant in the national economy. I would just say quickly, and then Jonathan, you could take it if you want. The ALJ has to go and correct the things that the AC said he didn't do. Doesn't mean he's going to award you, but he has to at least go back and provide an adequate evaluation of the opinion evidence.
Yeah.
amongst the other things.
And I think the second part of that, if you go down the next part of it, it says you find much success with the remanded claim. Many times a judge, after they get slapped down by the AC, will sort of get the hint that the AC took this because they thought there was enough there. It's not, it's harmful error. In other words, if the judge made a mistake, but it's really not harmful, they may just affirm the denial. But I've literally seen, and I had a case last week, it was remanded from district court, and the district court said in the order, while the court cannot see any circumstances where this person could really work, we're not in a position to make that decision. Hint, hint. ALJ.
That's a great hint.
Yeah, that's a great hint. Okay. And I put that in my brief. I'm like, here's the hint. I put it in, I'm going to put it in red, but I don't want to overdo it. And actually went back in this case to a much more sympathetic judge, which was good. But I would say,
you didn't get the same judge.
You didn't get the same judge, which is good, because the first judge is I'm not going to say. We're a family show, but he's not a real nice guy. But this judge,
Tasha can't hear that stuff.
Was very, that was your bird may hear it and repeat it. That's the problem. So I would say that some judges recognize that the reason a case was appealed was because they screwed up, but the appeals council, between the lines, is saying, we took this case, or the district court, we took this case because we think you made a problem in making your decision was wrong. Some judges pick up on that. I'd say probably 3/4 of them would say, well, if you went to the trouble of remanding it, I get what you're saying to me. Other judges are like, I'm not letting no appeals council tell me nothing to do. They don't care. They're just going to say, we're going to do what I'm going to do what I want to do. So, hopefully, but your question is really, the judge made a mistake in terms of legal analysis. So there's nothing you can do to change that. If you have additional evidence that maybe firms up the opinion evidence, or
super important,
something like that, or that shows you can't do those particular jobs, what I would probably do is listen to the prior hearing and make a list of the jobs the vocational witness identified, and then be prepared to explain why you can't do those jobs. And maybe even frame your testimony so that, let's say that the job required you to be, to reach overhead with your left upper extremity, and you can show, well, because I've got shoulder impingement, I can't do that. This is one where hopefully you have an attorney who can kind of figure out what the best way to prepare it would be. I would say on average, it's probably going to be in your favor that it was remanded, but you still got to be prepared to prove your case.
Yeah, I would add too, and this is also from as a humanistic kind of perspective, with a judge who already denied you. I always push for this with my people, assuming their DLI, date last insured, is not in the past. I always say, get some robust evidence. Give the judge a reason to feel, well, now I can, because they have egos, some of them. Yeah. So give him more evidence that says, and he could say to himself, well, had I seen that, then that would have been different. And then he might give it to you, maybe not originally to the original date, but as the date of that new evidence that's within your DLI. So sometimes it's just you just kind of, you're working with a human, and I think if you can give him reason to show, this is also true on initial and recon too, in a sense, because give the recon person a reason to not feel like he's opposing his colleague down the hallway when he flips it. Give him some good meat where he could say, well, now it's different. My God, my friend down there didn't have this information. Right. So now I can.
Although be careful if it's new stuff, because you don't want the judge to say, well, I'm going to find you disabled, but I'm going to change the onset date by 2 years. So,
true, except you have to submit it, and it's better to get that date than no date, right? True. I think it's an obstinate, one of those poorly awarding guys or gals. But yeah, it could be a different onset date for sure. Art also says, do you find much success with a claim remanded for those reasons? It's always a reason similar to that. Yeah. Yeah,
I'd say overall, yes. Not guaranteed, but overall, yes, in my opinion.
Yeah. Agree. All right. The Quiet Storm. What a nice, interesting name you have. Nice to meet you.
There used to be a soap opera called The Secret Storm. I don't know why I remember that.
Really?
Yeah.
How old were you, like 2?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't watch soap operas, but I think
I used to when I was young.
Yeah, I don't know why I remember that. I have a habit of remembering very irrelevant things, and that's one of them. So
I think we all do.
yeah.
um, okay, so the Quiet Storm says, I've been watching your videos for quite some time. I appreciate that. My 22-year-old son just got
Wow.
approved in
That's
reconsideration.
amazing. That's great.
That's
That's
really,
amazing.
yeah. We have been waiting 3.5 years. Okay, the information you gave in your videos helped me win. Oh, awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And it sounds like you set him up if his established onset date after they awarded him a reconsideration was before he turned 22, you've set him up for future DAC.
Right. Disabled adult child. That's right.
Yep. And I would also just throw in there for the DAC people like that, keep all that medical evidence, get that file, keep the medical evidence, kind of keep it always continuous. I don't know what the impairments are with the adult child, but know those rules about if he ever has a break in, with SGA for a sustained period, that DAC is going to be off the table later, because it'll be a break in the disability, and it's got to be
Right.
continuous.
Right.
So just things to think about, but get that old because sometimes they will lose it. I feel like the SSA won't have it, all the stuff that you won with this time, and then 20 years from now, when you or the other parent retire or someone gets disabled, God forbid, or God forbid even more, someone passes away, and your son is now eligible for DAC on the parent's work record. If you can't produce the medical records showing that it's almost like it should be res judicata, I think, right? The fact that it was a disabled,
Yeah.
but even the ones showing the continuity, you might have a problem. I'm not saying you necessarily will, but I just think better to be safe than sorry. Keep that stuff in a good secure file, maybe keep a duplicate on.
Yeah. Well, look, I tell my clients, I mean, and I don't know if you use things like Assure or there's a bunch of these different services, but like when I work on a file,
Sure.
I get it's not a CD anymore. It used to be a CD. I get a PDF, a single PDF file of all the records, and I send it to my clients. Like, here's your file. Just keep it. Put it in a safe place. I mean, I probably will have it because we don't throw anything away. We keep it on our Dropbox server.
It's not the paper systems anymore. Thank goodness.
So it's one PDF file, and you can just download it to your computer, make a couple of copies of it, and put it someplace. That way, you got it. And it's always good to have your medical records. I mean, you always want to have that.
Yep. Keep a file. Keep a file. H is in the house again. Glad to see you here again. Thank you for all your help. You bet. Sarah D, not sure we met. She says, I just had my hearing. At the end, the vocational expert listed off some jobs and said for those jobs, you can't be off task more than 10% of the time and not miss more than 1 day per month. But she continues on to say, my FMLA and ADA file that was submitted showed I was out of work more than 1 per month and more than 10% off task. Will they not take that into consideration? I think they will. However, point it out, and did that continue? That your FMLA was in the past, so you need to have continuing evidence developed. Maybe that shows that you didn't improve from the time you were receiving the FMLA, so that your less than ideal attendance would be something that would be expected to continue. Maybe it might be a strategy there. What do you think, Jonathan?
I'm sorry, I was just typing you a quick note. So I'm totally.
You want me to go back? Oh, sorry. It was just she had a hearing, and at the end, the vocational expert did list off some jobs.
Okay.
But then also responded that you can't be off more than 10%. So someone must have asked that question.
Yeah.
Or miss more than 1 day. And she said that her FMLA time period, and the ADA file, Americans with Disabilities Act, I presume that was submitted, that showed that she was out of work more than 1 month and off task more 10% of the time.
Is that
I'm
really
guessing
evidence?
Representative, and that was probably in the file that they have, that the judge has.
Yeah.
And he probably made a point to point it out.
Is that medical evidence? In other words, that's a finding. I don't know what. I'm not sure what bearing that or what probative value that has. I don't know.
If it shows her attendance records, like sometimes we submit attendance to show the history of how many days.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be relevant. Yeah, be relevant. That certainly would be. Yeah, that should be. If those records are in the file that shows that that you in fact were missing all this time from work, I think that would at least the judge would have to explain why he didn't consider that or she didn't consider that.
Yeah, for sure. I heard a little glitch. Can everyone still hear us?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Can
can
you,
hear you
did
fine.
it, then maybe it was just my, because the phone call came in, I just clicked it off, but then I just want to
Okay,
make sure.
okay. Yeah, I'm
Um,
gonna have to run in about 5 minutes because I've got to
yeah,
sometime.
it's already 2:30.
So yes, I
Yeah,
apologize to everybody out, but I do
it's all
want to.
good. It's all
Yeah.
good. I know sometimes we run long here, and I'm trying to.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I just
Yeah, no, it's fine. And I appreciate you being here. So Heather says, second recon function report is so overwhelming. Symptoms vary dramatically by intensity, by days, hours, or even minutes. My best days are fairly decent, and I could work through it. Heather continues to say, worst days are debilitating with no warning. Migraines, other intense headaches, dizziness, faint feeling, nausea, vision impairments, cognitive issues. My specialists are trying to find effective. She's only, oh no, wait, she's only 39.
oh, she got a brain tumor too.
Large, yeah. So do you have anybody, do you have an attorney that can assist you
Yeah.
with
I
that?
mean, as far as filling out the form, I would probably fill out the form based on your functioning when you're having a bad day, when
Yeah,
you're symptomatic. You could put on the form, that this is applicable when I'm having a bad day, which is typically, X number of days per week or per month.
exactly. Then
That
just
way,
talk about those days, because
yeah,
the good days are really not
yeah,
what disable you. It's the rest of it.
right, right. But if you're having, one bad day a week, that's going to be disabling because that's, more than typically vocational witness will say one, maybe 2 days a month you could be off. But if you're having more than that, that would be sufficient, I think.
Right. And Heather, also, I don't know if you saw it, there's a playlist on function report, and it goes question by question. So it's not like one big 2 hour about the whole thing. It's like, if you have a question, there's a section that, there's number 5, there's a few of those, and number 6, and probably number 20. And, but all the other ones, I don't even know if anything's missed. Just things to keep an eye out for if you wanted to look at that. Let's see. All right. I know at 39, it's tough, but and also maybe journals about how often you're in bedridden,
Yeah.
those bad days.
Right. Or symptom
Historical journals, if
Yeah.
you haven't been doing it, start it now. By the time
Right.
you get to an ALJ, which might be where you're heading, ultimately. I don't need to be a Debbie Downer, but you have to always prepare for that. If you start that journal now, and when I mean journal, I don't mean like writing out your thoughts. I just mean like with a little legend about bedridden, like bed day, something like that. You can sum it up later, and you will have submitted it. You could even go to your doctor, but you can submit it to the ALJ. It's historical, so it's not like you made it up at hearing. It's like, months and months, and it can be supportive, I think, because it's fresh in your recollection when you wrote it, and it can really help define how often you're having the bad days. Dr. Wright says, or is it Dr. Wright? I don't know. Any knowledge or input on adjudicator in New Jersey?
Yeah.
No. I see he's been a long-time supervisor at DDS in New Jersey, and my case has been assigned to him. No. There are so many adjudicators, and you don't even remember the names,
Right.
quite frankly. Although sometimes I see repeats, but Met Fabulous says, my question is, my son is going on 26, and we have a comprehensive clinical psychology evaluation to see if he's still disabled. He's been disabled since 2. This is the second time. Is this normal? Are you saying is he
Maybe they sent
on
him out to a
SSI?
consultative or something, like
Is he on a
probably
like a
review count.
CDR?
Yeah,
CDR?
maybe. I mean, it sounds like they sent him out for an evaluation. I mean, I will tell you, anybody in their 20s, that's the target. They're going after people that are younger. So it may be that they're sending him out for another evaluation, and they will continue to do that because they're trying to get people in their 20s off disability. So
Yeah, I think there was always, I remember speaking to some ALJs a few years ago. Well, one ALJ, I should say. Although I feel like I've heard it elsewhere too, that it is a really tough call. They want to be really, really careful. Historically, this is like, it's just human nature to pigeonhole a young adult into disability, because it means it's going to, if they could have done something and had a more fulfilling life of feeling, self-sustaining and stuff like that, or even partially, like with a low income or whatever, SGA, you're really like cutting them off at the knees, because now they're going to be
right.
Yeah, and become, we become what we do, right?
Yep.
So we're always dependent on. So I think sometimes it's almost like a grandfatherly or grandparently or parently kind of resistance, and sometimes it's dead wrong, because the facts are. But I think it's sometimes trying to be altruistic. So, and sometimes I think parents have been too pushing
right, too ready to label your right.
So I think they push back on that a little bit. Not always correctly, of course. I mean, I had one that I thought was incorrect, and it happened.
Okay. I got to run because I've got an appointment.
Thanks for coming.
30 minutes. So I really appreciate the time to chat with you and your audience. And I'll give you a call later. There's something we need to talk about.
Oh yeah. I'll be around.
So
let's go over it.
So everybody,
see you Thanks, all. Jonathan.
I'm available if you want to see mine. I'll be online at 8:30 tonight. So I'm going to be doing a lot of talking today. So
I'm going to try to. You got to rest that. Drink your water. I'm going to try to pop in and just say hi. Like,
okay, very good.
See,
all right.
All right.
See you. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye. All right, guys. We are solo again. That was fun, huh? He's awesome. All right. Yeah. So Met Fabulous. Just going back to you. Is your son in a since he's been on disability? So he's probably on. Is he on DAC now? Is he on SSI? I'm assuming he's never had his own work record in which to get SSDI in his own name. Just throwing that out there. And so if so, is it a CDR and they're sending him? It's like Jonathan said, they're going to check, at some point when a child's been disabled for a really long time and it's going on so long, I mean, I think the chances, not to be a Debbie Downer again, but of the person spontaneously improving enough. Although there have been exceptions. So sometimes when medical treatments change, there can be the miraculous new thing. And that's probably what they're kind of also looking at, maybe. But so is it typical? I can't really say. I don't know if it's typical or not, because I don't hear enough of it, because we're obviously not representing the people on the CDRs that are still collecting their benefits and stuff. We have Tan. Husband was denied in May, and nice to see you, Tan. I don't think we met. Was denied in May. He called 2 weeks ago, and they said it has not been assigned an examiner yet. He was denied in May, so I guess he's on recon, right? Is he on recon? Should we call every week? I wouldn't. I mean, you can. It won't hurt anything. I just don't know if you want to. You could do it less frequently. I mean, it's going to get an examiner eventually. He was denied in May. I don't know when you appealed. So you're not even looking. Let's see, you appealed in June, July, August, September, October. It's been 4 months. I mean, at some point you can consider asking your senator if you could check to see if there's a cog in the wheel while you're not don't have an adjudicator. And the funny thing is, I know the reason why is because they don't have it they don't have enough to meet all the people that have filed and been denied on initial, and so they're kind of, I guess, a shortage given the amount of cases in there. But sometimes squeaky wheel, there are cases that are prioritized, though, like veterans that are 100% P&T are supposed to be prioritized, people who are going to be evicted or are foreclosure has started on their house. Obviously terminally ill people also. So if you're not one of those, and I hope you're not, you have to come behind them anyway. So it's difficult. I know. Just try to hang in there. Ton also says we have more medical records. Oh, you can. Well, you probably don't have a barcode page. If you had a representative, hint, hint, you probably should get one. That person can upload to the Electronic Records Express. Sometimes it's called the appointed ERS. I call it ERE, Electronic Records Express. whether there's an adjudicator on board or not. I have cases right now with no adjudicator, and I'm still putting in my correspondence when I have a thought about what they should look at, putting in evidence as it comes my way, and all that. So when someone is on it, that stuff is right there for them to look at. They don't have to go and order it. There's not another month or two for that provider to get it in there. I do also specify, though, that this is only to this date and the person is still treating with them. So don't, if they come back in, which they will, then we got to order the updates after what I sent you, and that might be me doing that extra update too. That happens as well, but kind of just staying on top of it the whole way, not on a daily basis, but because you don't want to send in one day's records, and like you want to kind of have a group for them to look at, so you're not ignoring them too much when they get in there. But if I were you, I would make sure that gets in there. So maybe you could ask them for a barcode page for your case, even though there's no adjudicator. I don't know if they can do that. But if you had a representative, you could certainly get those records in there so that when the adjudicator comes in, buddy, I'd like to think there is a barcode that they could do. I just don't know. For, pro se's, you guys fax it in, the barcode makes it fax into a scanner, and then the barcode makes it go right into your own file. So that's why that's a little better than don't fax it to the field. I mean, this is my personal opinion. Faxing to the field office is like sending it to, I don't want to insult field offices, but a lot of times it just doesn't make it up there. Ask a lot of people who have done it. It for whatever reason, even if we send in a letter to the field office saying, hey, I'm the attorney, here's my representation documents, get me connected. I've seen that take months. So all these things go into a receptacle, and then some slowpoke is going through the in-faxes. So just consider that. I would definitely try to get it right up to the DDS and not expect the field office to do it, because you might just not get what you're hoping for. Tan says, okay, the husband will be 61 in the spring. You don't have a representative, huh? I feel like I don't want your recon to look exactly like your initial, but at this rate, it's going that way. If you want TON 2034, go to, I'll type it in here, joydisability.com. Be nice if I could type and see, but I can't. It's so small. And you can, if you look in the upper left of the page, there's a free SSD evaluation. If you want to submit that, also stay in wherever you're typing anything out, say, was that Stephanie's live stream? I'm TON 2034, and she said for me to send this in. They're going to send it right over to me because I'm telling you specifically, not the whole world, but to do that, and it will come right to me. I mean, let's take a look. If you're looking for representation, and having it a little easier maybe to navigate this whole thing. So just consider it if you want it. Okay. Jennifer says, oh, hi, Jennifer. Jennifer Cologne. I had a lot of bad changes, new diagnosis and surgery since I completed my questionnaire. I'm not sure what questionnaire you're talking about. Do I go into full explanation of what I can do? You do mean what you can't do? Oh, now as popped to what, now as compared to what I listed before. I think you might be talking about your function report. Yeah, you can, even though they didn't ask for it. I don't know how long it's been since the other one. If you don't want to do the whole function report, because most of it's the same, but one particular point is different, and you want to do it in a letter, you can do that too and get it up to the adjudicator if you're at the adjudicator stage. If you have an attorney, though, definitely go through them first and make sure everything's kosher. But if you're a pro se, then that's something you might want to do for yourself. Getting that information in front of the adjudicator of here are now my further limitations because this has occurred, blah, blah, blah. There you go, as opposed to what I could do before. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, all your new visits too, always, if you're self-representing, you need to always get those in front of the adjudicator if you have one, even if you have to do it by calling them every time. you know, like I just had a new blah, blah, blah. I like things in writing so you can prove that they got it, which is hard if you call them or if you fax it in, you won't know, unfortunately, and you can't see it. Oh, I take that back. Thanks to Anna, who told me this. You can upload your own evidence, I believe, to the SSA. I assume it gets to the DDS through your My SSA account thing, and you can see it in your online access. It's not the same as seeing the electronic file, but you can see what you uploaded that they have, and then you can confirm it's in there. I would take screenshots too, just because I don't trust things disappearing. But anyway, that's a really handy thing that they developed probably these last several months as they've been kind of speeding that kind of tech help for pro se people to be able to help, you know, further their own case. Derek says, hi, Derek. After medical initial review stage, will I get approved within 30 days, even if my claim was flagged as in dire needs? I'm deaf. So you're on initial. I don't think there's a 30-day limit. No. Did you hear that someplace, Derek? I mean, dire wouldn't be because you're deaf. No. It would be for a different reason, generally speaking. It's not usually, I'm deaf, I'm got a bad back. It's usually not something like that. Terminal, but not deaf. Jennifer said, you said I have a strong case last week. Good, but I'm nervous about the hearing because so much has happened medically since I filed. All my answers, and you have a hearing coming up. Okay, all my answers will be different, more disabled, supported by medical proof. And I think you had a lawyer, right, Jennifer? I think. Yeah, if you don't, or if you do, you got to communicate with your lawyer, and they got to get in the medical. You got to get all the new evidence in front of the judge. That's the whole point, not just what was in front of the lower level, right? So you need to make sure the ALJ will have sent you, if they didn't already, they will, an actual form for you to put down all the treatment you've had since you filed your appeal, where you put all the stuff up to that date. So you're going to want to fill that out and make sure you get that back to them. You know, when you have an attorney, it's not so critical because we're getting them everything. But if you're not, then you really want to get that into them. My attorney thinks we will get approved. Is that a good sign? That's absolutely a good sign, because he knows your case. So that's awesome. I mean, I always say there's no guarantees, but it's a good sign. Canova Henry. Okay, nice to meet you. I've been waiting for my reconsideration since April of 25. Oh, April 25th, sorry, of 2025, I'm sure. And I was admitted to the hospital for my brain clots in a different state. I just wanted to know how much longer I need to wait for my SSDI answer. That I would never be able to estimate for you. Did you get them? I assume that your hospital admission was after your denial and request for reconsideration, so it might not be included on your reconsideration appeal. So you're going to want to make sure you get that information to the adjudicator so they know that that happened to you and that medical impairment exists or was exacerbated to that extent, which is pretty scary. So fingers crossed for you and for your safety too. Hey, Sunflower. Woohoo, Sunflower's in the house. If your initial was denied and they say you can do light work, okay, and you're probably under 55. If you have a new diagnosis of severe hand arthritis, age 55, will this help the case significantly in reconsideration? Well, it's not going to change the light, most likely, because that's the exertional. Although, ironically, the lifting part of the light would arguably be affected by severe hand arthritis. Depends what your medical records say, and if your doctors are good recorders of, you know, how your arthritis limits your ability to hold things, carry things. You know, you heard me and Jonathan talk about how poorly things are worded a lot of the time, if worded at all. So, but I think that's a big deal because I will say this, and everyone knows how I am about the fingering and the hands. particularly for those over 50, if you're going to be relegated to desk work, and at 55, at light and sedentary, you can grade out if you meet all the other rules. But otherwise, severe hand arthritis would limit the amount of, the amount of activity you can do with your hands and your fingers. And those are usually implicitly required in sedentary jobs, desk jobs normally. So for what that's worth. What does your attorney say about that, Sunflower? That would be important. He or she is probably on it. P. Brown says, when I say avoiding doctors, I have a primary care only for 7 years. 7 years is pretty long. Longer than me, probably. He has stated I cannot work at all. That's no, because he is not qualified to say that. And the SSA will expressly reject that statement from him by saying he is opined on something that is reserved for the commissioner of the SSA. He can say what your medical limitations are, like can't walk more than 50 feet, very limited walking, intelligent gait, very, very unbalanced and unsteady. He can talk about the medical things, his observations, his findings. He can't say whether you can work because he has not studied all 12,000 occupations in the economy. So he really can't say that you can't do that simple, easy third grade job over there. He just can't. He doesn't even know what's required for that job. So that's the kind of letter that it seems like it gets under the crawl of the SSA when a doctor says it, and then they don't really necessarily give him much credence. And when you lose credence because of one little line, it's unfortunate. But what if it affects everything else he might put? So if you could really be more diligent about talking about what task functioning limitations you have, walking, standing, sitting, reaching, lifting, carrying, all that, and why, what diagnosis, and why does that diagnosis, what part of that diagnosis causes that, per se. And does he notice, if he's going to say you can't walk long, someone dropped a feather. You want that back? There you go. Yeah, 59 years old, that's a good age. You've got a big piece right there with a multitude of symptoms from Lyme. Oh, I am so sorry. The Lyme. That's horrible. I had a young woman, she just tipped over 18, but she had Lyme's at 11, and it has rendered her entirely very, very disabled, mentally and physically. No kidding. So I know when people get it bad, it get it really bad. I don't know why it picks and chooses who's going to get it the worst. Maybe I don't know. And I don't know if it's because it goes untreated or not or whatever, and then it's worse. I don't know. P. Brown, I forget where your situation's at. If you don't have an attorney and you want someone to look at it, go to that link I put on there, joydisability.com, and then go to the upper left and click on the link for the eval. It'll come through, and definitely mention your name, your username here. It's going to ask you for your regular name, but your username, and then they will know to match it up with this, confirm it, and then they'll bring it over to me. They will chat, guys. So otherwise, it's just got to go through the regular standard. Michael Jackson Shadow says, yes. Did I miss something? I hope not. Well, yes to you too. Oh, yes, you can hear me. Oh, okay. And Tom says it too. All right, I see it now. Back when I was like, Jonathan, did you hear that click? Can I hear you? All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Heather says that she did all this kind of very active work, physical, and she's not able to do it now. And she's just trying to get SSDI until her symptoms are managed. I get it. And that's possible too. Temporary, can't be super short term. As you know, guys, there's a 12-month duration, but I've had more than my share of clients who we prevail. They either improve enough to go back to work of some kind, and that's their choice and they want to do it, and I commend them for it. Or sometimes they've gotten a miraculous job that isn't in substantial numbers out there, but they had a good friend who knew a guy, and and then they get this job that they can do, without improving. It's not the kind of job that if they weren't doing it would be held against them because they could do it, because it doesn't exist in substantial numbers, and that's the beauty of that particular rule. But if they're doing it and earning, obviously they're going to fall out of step one of the sequential evaluation process, which is the person working SGA. But if they weren't working it, they'd still remain disabled and able to collect because they haven't improved. But when they have the opportunity, and it's usually making much more money than Social Security, because Social Security is but a small part for most of us of what we would be anticipating we would earn if we were working. Jesus Gutierrez, nice to see you. I think we chatted last week, right? I'm retired military disabled vet. Is it normal to be nervous for my CE physical exam? Yes, that's totally normal. That's not an overreaction due to anxiety. Everyone's nervous, so don't feel bad about that. I don't know if you saw it, but there is a video or two on consultative examination for the physical, I believe. And if you want to take a look, see as to what to expect, and maybe some cautionary things of, what to avoid doing if that would be your propensity. So feel free to take a look, see at that. It's probably under the playlist. I think there's a playlist consultative exam, so you're more than welcome to go look at that, Jesus. Okay, Met Fabulous. I think we're still talking about the sun, right, Matt? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not Met. Can you see him from the New York area? I'm thinking Mets. Mel Fabulous. I'm sorry. I've been saying your name wrong the whole time. I just saw it now. My eyes are not that great. You guys don't see me with glasses on here because they're more for distance, but my readers, I could probably use a little bit of tweaking. I did get some progressives, but where are they even? I'm like, they're not on my head, but it's hard. I'm not really so used to them. So your son is autistic and has severe alopecia and developmental delays. Yeah, I wouldn't. I think you're the one that said that you have it's like a consultative exam, so maybe he's being reviewed. It's probably just a double check. So I wouldn't be worried. They're just going to produce what, and if you have the old records from the old ones, maybe bring them to the consultative exam this time and say, this is his history. This has been, there's no, not that they want to hear you say there's no improvement. That could step on their ego, but to say, here's the ongoing exams and stuff like that. And they'll see, so hopefully that will all work out perfectly the way it should for you, Mel. Ton is on recon, or Ton's spouse. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ton. Ton says that's good information to know. Thank you. I hope to share. That's my aim. Time is up. All right. So we're almost at the 2-hour mark, but we got a few more minutes, guys. I'll try to get through these. Yeah, Ton, what if he uploads to the SSA account? Exactly. That's what I would do. If you don't have a representative, that's what I would do. Oh, okay. So Ton is also saying that she has a page that she can mail, not fax. Yeah, that would be the barcode page. Usually, I used to have it's a shame if they're making you mail it. Goodness knows, mail never gets anywhere reliably. Usually there's a fax number too. It could be in the letter that was attached to that barcode, like the cover page when they sent it to you, or it used to sometimes it would just put it right on the page. I wish they would do that universally. In case you don't have the cover letter, Hey, it's Green 9316. Hi, Green. First time here. Nice to meet you. I'm learning a lot. Awesome. Do you know how SSDI reinstatement approval rates for people over 56 during EXR period? I do not have any of that information. I don't even know if they publish it. If they did, and I could probably put some feelers out and see if they do. I've never really looked. I would for sure post it. All right. So I'd probably be posting it in, either I would do a short video and post the link, or I would, if I'm short on time, I might just post it in where I do posts on the main channel, which sometimes that place confuses me. But I don't know the approval rates on EXR, guys. Is, I think I said expedited reinstatement, and that's what someone can do if they were on SSD, lost or got off SSD because they did work over SGA, and the only reason they were off SSD was because of the income taking them off. No CDR where they were found medically improved. So if that was the case, and then that's my son, and then well, either the job is gone, the disabilities continue, or they get worse and they can't do that job that they were able to do despite being disabled, because it's one of those awesome jobs, right? That doesn't exist in substantial numbers. If the amount of time they've been away from SSD is less than 5 years, they don't have to file a standard new application for another period of disability. They can file an application for expedited reinstatement. I have a guy I just started with. Oh, that's you probably. Ha. Because I'm just seeing something there. And that's the goal. So yeah, I don't know the approval rates, Green. I'm sorry. I would think if the medical evidence has been kept up and continues to be kept up, and they see that it's still there, I think it's pretty good. I would like to think so anyway. I haven't been involved in a lot because it's not that common. It's really not that common. But those were successful. It took a long time, though. That's why when I say I don't think expedited is that expedited. And yeah, and I think we've recently learned, right, that they might send an 821 to see if the work was not, maybe it was subsidized, or it was, I don't know, certain factors could reduce that income. That's kind of rare too. So that's kind of and then they would do something different maybe, but I don't know that that's really going to pan out. And I never saw that before actually, but I don't know. I wish I knew what the rates were. I bet you they're not bad, and it can't hurt when you're 56. But again, it's going to depend on what you've been doing, to keep up your evidence, I would think, because they just have to know that the disability continues. So you're not exactly proving like specifically and hardcore all those things that you proved on initial. It's more of a, hey, did it continue? I mean, they obviously have to look at it a little closely because you were able to work. But what if that job was one of those where they're few and far between, or are they going to find that you medically improved and then you deteriorated again? So I guess we'll find out. Heather Ash says, field offices can be crazy. You think? Yeah. I handed my appeal into a person, and 5 months later, they claimed they never received it. Why didn't you do it online, Heather? Then you get a receipt right there, and you print it out if you don't have a way to, safely save it. Some people like to have the paper file and have it digitally filed. Either way. But she said she got a receipt. You got a receipt? Luckily, I had them type up a little something when I originally turned it in. Another way to do that, guys, if you're going to be delivering it in person, which is not ideal, but some people just do it that way, bring 2 copies of your appeal. And they should be willing to take the one and then stamp the one they're giving to you as copy, stamp, and says copy received or whatever by SSA on so-and-so. And then you have their stamp. That's another way of doing it. That was like old school, how we always got things when I used to do state court law before I was doing Social Security disability. Way back when I was really young, a few decades ago. Everything always was, you always had to submit 2 copies to the court, and they would return one as stamped, filed, received. And that was your proof. Now, back when I did it, guys, there was no electronic filing of anything. Nothing. It was crazy. It was the way it was, though, probably for centuries. Tom says, we took recon to attorney to look over, and he said I had everything he would put in. Even said I could talk with judge if denied recon. I said, no. That will be when my attorney needs. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. It's not as some attorneys will step in after recon denial, but you hurt your case a little bit, and now you have less time to prepare for hearing, and you can't follow the advice the lawyer would give you about how to strengthen it. It sounds like that attorney didn't really do Social Security disability if he didn't want to step up. But anyway, that's just my plugging that in there. Yeah, that's depending on how different your case is on recon as it was on initial, do you have a lot more oomph to it? Have you done a lot more to make it stronger? Then maybe you could get the initial overturned on recon. Recon overturns, I think a couple of years ago, we're running at about 15%. But that was overall. So that's for the people that don't do squat and the people that do. That was the overall rate. So I'm thinking the people that work hard to try to get recon to be stronger might, she's a little awake and she might be much higher than that. Maybe they're 50%. And then then there's ones that are at 0% or 2%. And then when you take the average, that's where they get the 15%. So you can really increase your chances and you're not stuck at the 15%. If you work up your case on recon and don't just let it ride. It's an opportunity. I have a video on that about don't waste your recon. This is such an opportunity to win without having to go to a judge and then waiting. I mean, you could wait 4 months or you could wait a year, or gosh forbid more if things get slow again, like they were I don't know, 10 years ago or 8 years ago or something. All right. But you know how to reach us, Don, if you want. Hey, Karen, nice to see you. Just letting you know I was approved in reconsideration. I'm considered permanently disabled because of my MRI. I'll only get worse, not better. I'm sorry. I'm 54, CDR 5 to 7 years. I gave up my SSI 1 month. I'm SSD. SSDs, I always think the preferred anyway. So, Karen, I'm really, really happy for you. Yeah, stay on top of it and try to get better. So you can have improved quality of life, which, whenever you're impaired enough to be found legally disabled, there is some sort of implication on quality of life. So I hope yours is hanging in there. Oh yeah, Jennifer Cologne says, I'm not sure what that says. I could make a joke about this, Jennifer. Jonathan Ginsburg, I update to his portal every visit. Oh, yeah, he's awesome. So that's good. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate. Karen continues. It says the SSDI lady told me to get Medicaid to spend down to pay for 185 fee. 2 weeks after approval, I was rushed to hospital with a mini stroke. Oh, Karen, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that's not really my forte, the medical spend down business to pay for that. I know that if you have really low SSD and you can also, I don't want to misspeak here. Some people have SSD and SSI, but you don't have any SSI, so your SSD is higher. Yeah, look into if there's a program where even though you're not on SSI with Medicaid, you can get it due to low income separately. This might be through your state. And then sometimes if you have it concurrently, you got the Medicaid and you got the Medicare, and the Medicaid will pay the premium for the Medicare. That's $185 of your income from whatever source, presumably SSD. That doesn't have to go to that premium every single month. That's $185 in your pocket. And it's for those that have the lower income, despite, having won their case, where so much of that benefit would be going to SSD. All righty. Oh, me Heidi's in the house. Nice to see you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is always fun when me and Jonathan get together. I always have fun. It was funny. He had reached out to me over an issue we're going to talk about. And I'm going to show him something in terms of how we make our availability to OHO. And we say we have to do it 5 months in advance. So for every month out there. So sometimes I do several, so I don't have to wait for 3 months. But they have a whole new system, and it's much easier. And you could do your availability. And it's so far out that I just have a general availability, but I do morning and I do afternoon, and I leave a long lunch hour because that's when I like to do my consults with people who want a consultation. Sometimes if I need to do something lickety split that I can't just like put off for a week or two and get it somehow wormed in the schedule with my clients, that's where I would use that time. So I like to have, morning session, and I break it down. And I think he might want to do that too, because he was talking about splitting up the day. So I'm going to show him how to do that with their new online system. It's been around a couple of months now. It's awesome. It saves me, I want to say, a whole day a month. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's a whole day, but if I could squeeze in 3 months, but it's still a whole day. It's like, my days are long. They're like at least 12 hours. So I'm like, oh my God, manually doing it was a horror show because I'm in all 12 regions in the country. If someone's only in their own little local pocket, that's all they know. It's super easy. They just have to, and they would make you do all the math on the different time zones, and it was crazy. And they've improved that. They must have gotten enough complaints. So I was one of the first people to hop on that bad boy when that came out. So, okay. Anyway, it's good to see you, Heidi. Silk28 says, do you know how difficult it is for SSDI reinstatement for people over 57? Didn't we just have this question? Is this green? Over 57 during the EXR period who can no longer work because of their initially approved disability? It all is going to depend on your evidence, I think, but it's easier than a whole new application, or it's supposed to be speedier anyway. The times I've seen it, maybe the reason why I was in was because it wasn't so speedy. I can't remember. I don't, they're not that common because most people just don't go back to full-time work, but then some do, Most of my people, when they go back to work, if they can go back to work, it's under SGA and they stay on SSD. So, and then the ones that have returned to work did fine. So they're still there. So that's awesome. So they got their SSD for a brief, I guess I need more potassium. I'm getting that twitch. Maybe a little water. I don't know. I can feel the twitch in my eyes so bad, but you guys can't see it, I don't think. It just started. Okay. Heather says, I waited 5 months before I even filed because I was hopeful I'd return to decent health sooner. I waited 5 months before I even filed. It's been 15 months since I filed my first claim. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a lot of time. That's why I think, Heather, they give the possible 12 months of benefits before the date you applied, so that people don't feel like they have to go and apply the day they stop work, which does not usually make for the strongest case. Anyway, it's like so you can feel it out and not bombard the system with something that's going to be temporarily resolved. And it, just as a reminder, guys, 17 months is the magical number for SSD. We're just talking about SSD here, not SSI, because of the 5-month waiting period and then the 12 months. So if you feel you were disabled in hindsight 12 months ago, if you file now or in the next 5 months, 5 months, you'll be within that 17-month window where none of those benefits that you didn't apply during of those last 17 months are going to be unpayable. Should you be able to prove you were disabled back to when you think you are? It's helpful to let people have some breathing space to see if they are disabled, and also to, after they stop working, to build their evidence before they apply, and then maybe have a better shot on initial recon. Okay, and you're welcome, Heather. It's nice to meet you. Canova Henry says, I do have a lawyer, good, and my lawyer forwarded it to my new state reconsideration office. That would be, the DDS. I applied for my first ST applicant in July 2025, And I was in Florida for knee and back problems. And then you're the one that moved, right? Oh, you moved to PA. I'm in PA because I haven't worked since 2025 until now. You mean 2024, right? Because it is 2025 now. So my lawyer transferred all my medical records to PA, even the new healthcare. He doesn't have to transfer them. Whatever was already in there would still be in there. You don't have to transfer them. The DDS, remember, this is all federal system. Okay, so whatever you submitted before is still there for the next guy. No worries. People move all the time. My clients move all the time. Yeah, so he's been waiting since, or Canova, Henry says, been waiting since July to hear about the reconsideration claim. It could take a year. You know, different offices are slower than others. You know, keep in mind, and just as a reminder, the DDS in any given state is, the state has disability adjudicators. They have, because the states have their own disability programs by and large. So, or disability related programs. So they have these workers and they take however many, and they outsource them to the federal government's Social Security program. So they're technically paid by the state. The state pays them, but they're outsourced. So obviously the federal government is going to be paying something to the state to do that. Now, I'm not sure who makes the decision on how many DDS workers will be working from the state on the federal stuff. I don't know if it's a state decision or a federal. I would think it would be federal. They say, we need 100 people on this because of the amount of volume you have in your state or whatever. I don't know. I'm just curious. That just popped into my head. But they're doing just the federal work. So, and that's why they have federal quality reviews to make sure those normally state workers that are now doing federal work are actually following the federal rules and not some other process. Little Bug was approved in 4.5 months. Awesome. That's good. That's considered quite expeditious. That was expeditious back when they were expeditious. Canova says, I thought since I just turned 55 in September, I thought I would have heard something by now. No. The age doesn't change how fast they can look at your medicals, order your medical records, get all your updates, review them. That's not going to really change on age. Turning 55, though, means you might have hit a different rule once you turn 55 that would grant you disability because you would meet the rules that you meet the day you turn 55 or the day before, and not at 54.99. So if that's the case, again, I don't know if we talked before, but there wouldn't be back benefits, but at least you'd win your case and have your prospective benefits. Karen, did I skip you? I thought I was chatting with you. Did something else come up? Oh. No, I didn't. We talked about that, right, Karen? Am I just slow on the take here? Look at this. Ancient ones. I was going to say ancient tones. Ancient ones. I'm 100% PNT veteran, 28 years old, 28 years young, diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. I'm very sorry, ancient one. Bipolar type back in 2021. Multiple failed work attempts with documented medical history of my diagnosis and my psychiatrist. Treatment letter. What else can help my case? It's going to depend on how severe your symptoms are. So I can't say. It is an uphill battle for young people because if you look at the what I think you should look at, I know we have a video on this someplace, probably under mental health claims. If you look at whichever one has about the 4 basic areas of mental tasks that are required for any job, simple 3rd grade job or, more skilled job. And if you have a substantial loss in any one of those 4 major fields of tasks, like one might be in the sticking to a schedule type of thing. But they have multiple, examples underneath. If you were extremely limited in one, or in a few of those little tasks, markedly unable, that might show that that particular area is something you have a substantial loss in, and that particular area is required for every single job. So if you have persuasive evidence, which would probably include, what has your psychiatrist been saying all along, not just in a letter that you asked for, where he suddenly is trying to produce stuff that's not already in his records, that's not so great. I mean, if his records, if he shares his psychotherapy records, which he has the power not to, even if you want him to, it's a little, I don't like that carve out that the mental health industry was able to achieve for themselves, contrary to every other provider under the HIPAA rules. If he does share them, and if they are detailed and they really support these difficulties, then any kind of opinion statement he makes addressing those things and which ones would be extremely off limits or substantial loss in that particular area for you, and why he knows it, like what he points to, maybe the examples that he helps just exemplify. And here's some examples of, how he's, aside from his diagnosis, what I've seen that shows that this is a very poor area for him. That would be helpful. You want and it has to be, does he see you all the time? Does he, you have a psychiatrist, you have a therapist also. Do they both kind of say the same thing? Are you seeing them very regularly? Like if you have a severe mental condition or illness and you're only seeing someone once a month, it might not look like it's that serious. I mean, it's impacting your whole life, you say, and then you only see them once a month. You'd think you'd be a little more aggressive on trying to improve it. It's kind of like how we say it in the physical too. Ancient ones, if you have had documented incidents of where your symptoms have caused bad behavior, it could be legal, it could be in medical records documented outbursts that took place in front of your doctor, or anything where it's substantiated by someone that's not you, and maybe not someone who's really close to you, like a family member, although they can also substantiate it. But the more objective substantiation you can get of, it could be terrible lack of control, the impulsivity. It could be a very, very low threshold of tolerance for things that get frustrating, like your frustration level, you get triggered really easily. It could be altercations. It could be those jobs that are unsuccessful, where do you have documentation that you were fired for an altercation or a poor reaction to your supervisor because you just can't really interact appropriately with a supervisor who's, say, telling you something to do, or maybe critiquing you, that kind of thing. Or coworkers, same thing. Jobs that don't involve the public or coworkers, I think, exist. There's no job that you don't have to occasionally interact with a supervisor. So if interacting with a supervisor can be proven to be something that you couldn't do reliably on a sustained basis, that could be something too. By the way, admissions, psychiatric admissions, if they are recent, like in the last year, maybe if you've had repeat ones, and not like every 10 years per se, but more frequent than that, that's also indicative of the exacerbations that keep occurring. So you get step study and then it goes down again. So just things to think about with the mental health. 39 Rennie. I'm having a second hearing on November 13th. Very nervous about it. He offered to approve me at my 50th birthday and I said no. So then he scheduled a second hearing. Okay. Well, I know. Jonathan and I were talking about this earlier, like the propensity to do that. I haven't had any of those this year, but I told you that one last year. What was it? Even 23. Maybe 23 and maybe 22 to 24 when we finally got the hearing. And it was like, oh yeah, I used to say, well, as of 55. It was very annoying. So that whole thing hasn't improved over the years. They're pushed for that. Okay. Jay Palmer said, at my hearing I had this month, just curious if you could explain to me why my attorney barely said anything to the vocational expert, even though she told me everything went well. Maybe the vocational expert already said there were no jobs, right? Did we talk about this earlier, Jay Palmer? It's hard to say unless I heard the testimony, what was said, what the judge's questions were. Very, very telling. And then what the VE responses were as to whether or not your attorney was smart to keep her mouth shut. Christina says, hello from California. Hi, Christina. We here for Jonathan, Christina? Oh, Christina's always given a great support. She says, please don't forget to press the like button. I couldn't agree more. Oh, Karen, no worries. Delia. Oh, thanks, Delia, for hitting the like button. I appreciate. Is this the Delia I've met before? Hi, Delia. Hope everything's going okay. Okay. All right, guys. I think we're good, right? I think we're done. Agree or disagree? My son used to say that to us when he wanted something. He would be like, I can go to the, I can get an ice cream cone, right, Mom? Agree or disagree? Be like, disagree. Now he's old. He's like 17. Okay. I think we're good, guys. It's been 2:20. 2 hours, 20 minutes. I think we're good to go. I'll be here next Wednesday. That was fun with Jonathan, wasn't it? Yeah. I love it when company can come on. Anyway, all right. And then soon I have to meet up with him and go over the things we're going to go over. So very excited. Some really important stuff just from a practice point of view, like things that we're doing for our streamlining and some important stuff. So all good. We do a little strategizing together. So, all right. I'll talk to you guys later. Remember, 1:00 p.m. Wednesdays. Be here or be square. And 12 noon, the daily shares that come out. Are there things off the cuff from behind the desk related to Social Security, of course, by and large, or sometimes it'll be a Q&A we had, a little piece, and I think it should be expounded upon. And I try to get some additional stuff shared in there. So anyway, I hope you're all doing well. And again, if you always have you can always ask questions too under posts, under any video. If it is something that I can answer in video, I will do that. And then you'll have a video response as opposed to like a, really short written response, which sometimes can't really get to all the juice because that takes so long and my eyes and my fingers can't take it. But have a great rest of your week, guys, and have a great weekend and be safe and take care. God bless.